So today, in the next 55 minutes, we hope to, I guess, get an understanding of why we're all here today and joining this MS team call. What actual work have we done so far? What are we learning in terms of the insights over the last sprint? And I guess what's next? So I'm going to hand over to Dan to explain a little bit more about the show and tell format.
Thank you very much. So for those of you who've not kind of been to a show and tell before, really this is about us being able to be as open as we possibly can. So there's kind of two benefits. One, it allows us to be able to keep the team who's working day to day relatively small, which means we get further faster. But it also means and gives us an opportunity to kind of bring in all of your expertise and check in really regularly to understand and get feedback from you all. So this is really about showing progress early and often. So at the end of every sprint, we should have one of these where you get to see what the team have been up to and how things have been going and get an update on what's been going on. But it's also really important that we get your feedback. So everyone here on this call today, and please go tell your friends, try and tell your family as much as they may or may not listen, but definitely tell the people you're working with in your team as much as you possibly can. Get their feedback, bring it up to us, share it with the team. And finally, we'll be showing the next steps and how people can get involved as much as possible. So if you have any questions throughout, please raise your hand, put something in the chat, and one of us will spot that and make sure we get you involved as well. So thanks very much. I'll hand over to Juliet to kind of set the scene a bit more and do some introductions as well.
Thanks very much, Dan. And I think we're on to the next slide.
Is anyone else getting a bit of feedback?
Yeah, could I just check with everyone? Just mute your microphones at the moment. Excellent, good stuff. And I think we just need the next slide. Brilliant, thank you very much. So I just wanted to go through with you and introduce you to everybody that's on the core project team. So for myself, I'm Juliet Baker. I'm just going to turn my camera on so I can give you a wave. For those, I think pretty much everybody knows me, but hi there, this is me. Give you a wave, and I will let me admit someone else to the meeting. But so I'm project manager from the Future Northants side. So it's my job to basically ensure that we're keeping to the timelines that we have agreed to do so with our project governance. So if I can just start at the top left, and I'm going to introduce people and ask them just to quickly turn on their cameras and give us all a wave. So on the top left is Stuart, who is the project director from FutureGov. Hi, Stuart. Are you there?
I am. Sorry, I was waving. I didn't know you needed speech as well. But yeah, hi.
Oh, no, you don't need speech. I didn't see your video. Apologies. I'll move on. Okay. And then we've got Ali. And Ali is the lead designer for FutureGov.
Hiya.
Hiya. And we've got Chris, product designer.
Hey.
Hi. And Richard, we all know you. Richard Beards, NCC and a product owner overarching product owner for the North and West sites.
Oh, yeah.
And then we've got Rob Walker from South Northants, and Rob is our West lead and also leads on accessibility from the Future Northants team.
Hiya.
And then we should have Steve Marshall, who's a senior BA working with ourselves on Future Northants projects.
Hello.
Yeah. Dan Blondell, who was head of digital for LGSS and now NCC, who's already spoken to us. Hello. And then we've got George Jenkins. George is our lead from the North and from Corby District Council. Skipping over to Connolly, who is the delivery manager for FutureGov. Then we have Dan, a technical director for FutureGov.
Hello.
And Lee, the lead developer, FutureGov.
Hi, everyone.
Right, brilliant. Thank you very much. So just to give you, so as we started off the work, we're needing to obviously deliver some products for us for day one. And this is the indicative high-level timeline that we're working to. So it's just worth mentioning to you that we sort of split the work from this point onwards into a number of sprints, and we've got 12 sprints. So sprints are sort of short periods of 2 weeks where we define exactly what we want to deliver in that time. We aim to deliver it. We do a retrospective review of what we've delivered, and then we plan the next session. This is to help us keep on top of changes that are taking place for those of you who may not be used to working in an agile environment. So it allows us to develop and refine things as we go forward. And I'm sure the team will talk to you a bit more about that as we're going through this presentation. So we've got 12 sprints. 12 sprints, and it's our go live on the 31st of March. But between that and then, we're going to have a couple of other kind of key milestones, and if you want to look at those, you'll see there's a link up the top or right hand side where you can have a little bit more detail. Okay, moving on to the next slide then. Thank you. Why are we doing this work? It's probably fairly obvious, but let me move on. So basically, as you know, we're going to be having 2 new unitary authorities across Northamptonshire. We're going to be joining up the local districts and boroughs within those authorities and splitting Northamptonshire County Council, not quite down the middle, but to be part and parcel of both of the North and West authorities. So we need 2 new websites to give us basically a visual identity and a brand as well for our new authorities. So that's what we need on day one. And we're looking also to be able to have an improved customer experience. We want to make everything accessible, so it's easy for our customers to use in plain English. People can follow it for any sort of simple language, accessible for people with disabilities. We want to use data to give us an insight to help us with design and decisions of the website and of the information on it going forward, and of the way that people can obtain what they need from the website. So they go in, they want to do a transaction, or they want to find some information. Let's make it all user-centered. We want to give a view across all of our customer functions. So everything from end to end, online, in person, on the phone, and the website is just part and parcel of that journey for our customers. To do this, we're going to have to embed cultural change across all our service areas in the unitaries, and website is part of that. So thank you. I'll move on to the next slide. So what did we do to prepare for this? And as Richard alluded to, it was quite a journey even to get to this stage. So we started off with user groups rooms full of people with different opinions and brought everybody together. We had a soft market test exercise where we looked at some of the technology that we might be able to use. By a roundabout way, we came around to a various set of options. We put those together into a business case. The business case basically said, we need a partner to assist us with this. We want to have a partner with us to help us with agile design and delivery, user-centered website, helping us with our customer journeys. We identified a number of benefits, and we put together a timeline for milestones for putting that in place. And it's basically our responsibility to report back to the governance structure to ensure that we're meeting those different milestones and critical products. We're basically one of our 2 main jobs, I suppose, as a sort of SME working group on Future Northants, was getting things agreed and putting the work in to support those delivery aims in the long term. So apart from the options, business case, benefits and milestones, we've also had a number of key things agreed by boards, how the websites need to link up on vesting day, and you'll all be aware that we're looking at having 2 overarching websites linking back to our district and borough sites for a smooth customer journey. On vesting day, we'll have one common Northamptonshire County Council website, and we'll be looking to disaggregate everything over a period of up to 2 years. Disaggregate, I mean decommission everything for a period up to 2 years, so that we eventually end up with 2 websites. So we had that approved. We've had minimal viable product, content and accessibility principles approved for vesting day as well. And in the background, we've done quite a bit of work on publications process, branding, rebranding needs, e-form needs, e-form requirements and plans, gathering background statistics and info. So that's pretty much a whistle-stop tour for me. I'd like to hand back to Connolly to talk about what we've been up to.
Thank you. So there was a lot of great work that was done in order to get us where we were when we started 15 days ago. So we had a sprint 0, which is a bit of a setup sprint. And then for the last 10 days, we've been working towards sprint 1. So we've been very busy, and I won't go into micro detail, but you can see on the slide a couple of pictures to which Richard had alluded to. So we're using a technology tool called Miro, which is an online whiteboard, which allows us to kind of remotely work together and collaborate as if we're in the same room. We've analysed the stakeholders across the 8 different the 8 different authorities. So we've got that little team onion there, and we started off understanding, I guess, the different personality types that we have in our core blended team by doing team user manuals. On the initial kickoff that we did, we analysed, I guess, the core team's hopes and fears for the website project. So you can see a link to see the full hopes and fears, and you can see a screenshot of a couple of the hopes and fears that were mentioned. So just to read out one of the hopes, it was to have a slickish customer journey to find information services, simple CMS for authors to use. And I guess one of the fears was unclear user journeys or transitions between the sites. So we're going to kind of revisit this at the end of each sprint to just make sure that we are achieving the hopes and we're trying to steer away from the fears. And in terms of what we are learning, I'm going to hand over to Ale.
We hosted a website vision workshop that was mentioned before, and we started with reviewing a couple of documents. So in this case, the customer experience strategy documents for the North and the West. So we started by reading them all and making sure that we understood what was the long-term strategy. And then we did an exercise that was basically, okay, given like the long-term strategy, what can we achieve? And what do we need to make sure that it happens once we go live with the websites? So we did this brainstorming about what does the new website have to include. So we want to make sure that when designing a new website, we act on user feedback. So we're planning continuous interaction with users whenever we talk about end users, like aka residents, or we mean internal users as well. We want to keep a close eye on the performance of the services. So we want to have like a dashboard or something like that to make sure that we have a clear understanding about what is working and what is not on the website, what is attracting more demand and what less, and what needs improvement. We want, in general, like to play back to what Julia was saying at the beginning, we want to offer a familiar and accessible experience to people to make it easy for them to find what they need to. And therefore, we want to offer option for them to switch channel depending on what is their preference. And then, of course, we want to use plain English to make it easy for everybody to understand what we're talking about. And private, like it sounds basic, but it's not. We want to design a responsive experience to make it accessible on any device, really. So this is setting the way for us to design the new experiences. And now Chris will tell you more about it.
Hi, yeah. So alongside this work, obviously, we also want to start thinking about the visual look and feel, how the 2 separate websites are going to look. So we've started thinking about design vision. Obviously, there's been plenty of work done before we joined, which is great. And obviously, so the visual identity, the real goal of it, more than anything, is to provide users with consistency, to provide them a friendly and familiar experience, regardless of what they are doing on the websites. So in order to move fast, like we will definitely be pulling on, we won't be reinventing things that don't need to be reinvented. So working closely with the kind of GDS, the Gov UK style guide and components and things like that, and working to create a design system that can be utilized by both websites, that can create a theming to allow both websites to be built on the same framework, but visually distinct, so that users know where they are. Move on. So we did a great session with the team about inspiration as well, and we brought everyone together to talk through kind of what websites that they love, websites that they hate, and we were focusing in on obviously like the homepage being a kind of clear and distinct part of the website, the news section, and general kind of information pages. move on. So we've also been getting caught up with all the work that's going on kind of in parallel with the comms team. We've caught up with Rachel and Sarah, and have been working to start work on the visual look and feel of the two sites. So we have here the West, so a provisional kind of style. It's what's called a style tile. It's kind of to relay the kind of essence of the brand, the color, the typography, and the logos, which should be coming towards the end of the month. We have the West here, and then the next slide shows the North. So alongside this, we're working to try and ensure accessibility of kind of color contrast, and making sure this is all web ready. One of the things we're planning to do is to focus in on, as you might have seen, both brands have a primary set of 3 colors. So one of the things we want to do is to make those colors distinct. To create a kind of separation between the two sites is to pick a single color. So this adds to not only the ability for people to easily distinguish the two different websites, but also it's kind of a best practice for web design, digital design, so that users can understand what elements of the website are interactive and what elements are like call to actions. So for the North here, we're thinking the primary green, and on the previous one the blue, and which you might also see throughout this document. Pass you on over to Stuart.
Hello everybody, I'm going to channel my inner Chris Whitty for these next few slides. So I had the task during this sprint of trying to understand, I guess, the kind of structural makeup of all of the existing sites. So as we've kind of previously mentioned, the goal for Vesting Day is to kind of have 2 minimal viable websites, but over the course of the next 2 years, we need to decommission all of the existing sites. So we wanted to get a handle on what we could find out about the kind of scale and the scope of that challenge. So we used a tool called Screaming Frog. It's a very odd name piece of software, but it's primarily used to understand all of the pages and files that are accessible from an internet address and how they kind of interlink and the relationships between them. And it also starts to give us some useful insight around search engine optimization, the performance of the sites, and the kind of shape of the content. It's not totally accurate, I'll give that caveat, but it just allowed us to crawl all of the 8 existing sites and get a consistent set of data out. So we had sitemaps that the team gave us for each of the sites, but because of the differing platforms, they all came in different formats. So we've learned some interesting things. There's a lot of things accessible from the websites, a total of 116,905 URLs across the 8 sites, which is a lot. I've put on there don't panic, because URLs don't necessarily equal real pages of content. A lot of those are dynamically generated. But that graph shows us some interesting things. Out of all of the 8 sites, Daventry is the leanest in terms of its total amount of content. Some interesting patterns in terms of the number of links that are kind of internal and across the domain, as opposed to linking out to external resources. So the county site, as you'd imagine, has the largest number of outgoing links, and that's probably down to the fact that it hosts a few of the directories of service, like the local offer. On the next slide, out of those 116,000 URLs, what was interesting is that actually 54, nearly 55,000 of them were not actually to web pages. They were to documents, so PDFs and documents in various different Office formats, etc. This beautiful visualization shows the spread between kind of HTML pages, those types of documents, and images, and JavaScript and style files. I think, yeah, you can see like there's a lot of documents on there. There's various patterns that we noticed when doing the analysis. So a lot of them come from kind of democratic processes, like sharing of meeting minutes, etc. A lot to do with the planning process as well. Interestingly, none of the sites, I would say, had a massive amount of image use, which is probably good. But that number of documents is interesting. So obviously, having a transparent democratic process across all of the councils is a really good thing. But a lot of those document downloads means that it's kind of not meeting one of our one of our main aims, which is to have accessible content for people. There are problems around the accessibility of some of those formats that are being shared, and I've put a link in this slide to an article about that from the Government Digital Service if anybody wants to swat up on it later. Next slide. This is quite difficult to understand, but this is a map across all of the 8 sites of the content depth. So if you imagine 0 on each of these graphs is kind of your homepage, and 10 being the number of kind of clicks away from the homepage, it starts to show the shape of how content is distributed across the different sites. I mean, largely, I think we can assume, and we'll need to validate using the analytics, that most people probably find the content they're looking for using search, either on the website or from other sources like Google. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but certainly sites that have a wider distribution of content suggest that anybody who's having to navigate that from the homepage potentially would have some issues finding content. And finally, I guess what this analysis has uncovered. So we know that there's some solutions being proposed for the kind of publication of committee meeting minutes, etc. We need to get sight on what those decisions are so we can successfully integrate them into the website, but also potentially there's an opportunity there that we can influence and improve the accessibility of the content that's shared. There's definitely a need for us to figure out what solutions we're going to use for directories of service, such as local offer, and whether the strategy is to build that into the content management system or to use different solutions. It verified, I guess, there's a lot of different types of content across the sites, including maps and videos that we'll need to design solutions for. And also there's a lot of publication of data and statistics, whether that be financial accounts, etc., that we might need to think about how we tackle some of that. And there's also a lot of redirections and kind of vanity URLs across the sites that we'll need to have an ongoing solution to manage. So I guess next steps, some further analysis will help us understand how, so this is very much like from a computer technical process, how those sites are structured. We need to understand more about how users actually engage with the websites through analytics and research. We've got a bit more work to do to identify and verify out of all of those links how much of that relates to other systems that need to be integrated with, e-forms and subdomains. We actually need to understand more about the quality of the content that is on content pages. And also we need to use the data to help us prioritize some of those things on the left. So actually, what do we design first? What do we need for April, and what might come a little bit later?
All right, this is me. So alongside that works, Stu has just talked about of going very a really detailed, thorough analysis, going really wide and deep on every single link possible. We also wanted to start kind of thinking about the shallower, how the information is actually architectured. So information architecture just relates to how the information is ordered, what the hierarchy is, and how people navigate it. So this is just a very much work in progress, but we've started kind of bringing together all of the 8 sites and analysing in particular focusing on the navigation and especially the services, but not just how they are ordered and prioritised, but also what they're called. Like there's disparity and differences in naming conventions. So this is very much a work that will be ongoing, and it will form the basis of the navigation for the new sites. And this is really important for how, as Stu's already said, about how users will actually navigate the site and how deep they have to go to get to the information they're trying to find.
And then on a service level, so like moving on from what is information architecture looking like down to, okay, but actually what do we want to prioritize on the website? What are the key things that people are going to be able to access on the new websites? I've been checking in with all the work that Steve and Julie has been doing, and this is like a big applause, like a big kudos to them, because typically like on a project like this we would start from a blank page, and that's a lot of work to actually understand which service area need prioritization and why. So they would take up a lot of time. Well, actually they've already done that. So it's amazing. They've got like this massive spreadsheet with more than 100 rows with response from all the service areas, and possibly some of you have answered to the request for information at the beginning. But so what we have to do right now next slide, please, is to decide, okay, what are the services that we actually want to prioritize for the website to go actually live on April the 1st. So you might be aware of the safe and legal mission that we have. Therefore, like, what are the services that will help us meeting this goal? So, for example, legal and democratic services might be one of these. Possibly is going to be one of the ones. And the work we'll have to do is, once we have decided like which are these services, we will have to understand like what are the user needs behind this section, what is people trying to achieve when accessing this kind of information, down to like a content detailed overview about all the things that we need to include for this section. And then what is the tech actually enabling these pages? What are the existing platforms or new platforms, new tech solutions that are being at the moment procured in order to deliver the service? But in order to get here, next slide, please. What we have to do is like a strong prioritization exercise, because all services are eventually going to face changes, whether there's more changes about like a change in the email or a change in the address, up to like actually like service delivery changes. So we're going to host this massive prioritization with the core team to start with by the end of the month. So November 24th would be the first one, and then December the 1st, the final one, where we're going to ask ourselves, okay, out of all the services, where are the ones that are really fundamental to meet the safe and legal mission? And then out of these, then which are the ones that require new content or new pages versus which one actually just require rebranding or contextual information? For example, the right email. And then what can we deliver with the time we have? So these are just some of the criteria that we're going to use in order to make this prioritization. And then we will come back to the service areas and say, and have a plan about like their content, their pages, their services. How do we want to cover them with the time we have? Or we can even suggest to have a roadmap to cover the following months and possibly get everything sorted with the time frame that we will, that this project will continue on. Next, me? Yes. So how do we plan to take this forward? We're going to keep working with service areas, but then at the same time, we've got two main users we want to speak to. One is residents. We definitely want to speak with residents that have been using the website. They have been in contact with like any of the local authorities like recently or even not. Possibly residents have been using like that specific section, like the multiple ways we could go about it. But in general, we want to speak with them about the experience on the website. So we're going to use some mixed techniques. So definitely we're going to have some interviews to understand their context. Possibly we will do some cast sorting or tree testing. And this is going to be very much like a continuous cycle of testing, iteration, testing and iteration. And we'll start very early, so from sprint number 2, that is the one that we're kicking off now, possibly down to the end of the project. And then there is a second bucket of users that we want to work with. There are content leads, content editors, web teams, and comms team. In this case, like basically anybody who is going to be using the content management platform that we're going to create with the new websites. And the goal in this case is to talk about the content management process and the overarching model. How we're going to do it, what we're going to do it, we're going to host a number of workshops, and we're going to talk about what are the key pain points of the current operating model, up to like how do we want it to be, thinking about both the process and the tools that are enabling it, down to like Drupal setup that I know we're going to talk about Drupal in a little bit. So these are the main two targets. This is how we're going to tackle user research. And later on at the end of the presentation, we're going to show you like what are the leads that we have about residents. So for content leads, I think we're covered because we get the support of Dibo. They should be on the call. While residents, definitely we would like to hear from you. But anyway, if you want to get engaged with any of this, you're more than welcome to message us.
That's me. So TechVen, we have conducted a workshop to review the sort of state of play as we are so far and start to look at how we're going to make decisions. So a few things that we've learned so far across the councils. There's a mixture of content management systems, Drupal and Jadu at the top there, some SharePoint, and that's about it. We found traffic roughly similar across most of the websites, ranging up to about 400,000 page views a month sometimes. There's no centralized CRM system either across the existing councils or currently planned for certainly for vesting day. So forms and data currently flow through a number of different systems. Most commonly, we found forms running through Jadu or Firmstep. Content governance varies a lot. Some of you have got a centralized model with a small number of content management admins. Some places there's a bit more of a distributed model where content's managed within the service teams. We know that post vesting day, everyone's going to be using Office 365 for the centralization of accounts and user data. Yeah. So we're preparing something called a solutions architecture definition document. That's a real mouthful, I know. Essentially, it's a piece of paper that defines the various technical decisions that we're going through and making at the moment. We started to outline some of the themes that will appear in that document in our technical workshop. And over the coming next sprint and probably the sprint after, we'll really look to solidify a lot of those decisions. Currently, we're looking at two approaches and a combination of two approaches for how we work with Drupal. There's a decoupled Drupal, which is where Drupal becomes a small component within a eventually large ecosystem of other services and systems that can connect together. And there's also an open source project that we're currently looking to engage with at some level called LocalGov Drupal, which is currently being participated with about 10 other councils that are coming together to build a platform for how councils can implement Drupal. And they're doing it in the open, so it's a good thing for us to get involved with, even at a conversational level. We've established a few things. We've established that our new site will run search just on the new platform. We've done some review of the kind of browsers that are in use at the moment, and we've got a pretty standard, or we're seeing a pretty standard picture there, which I suppose is to be expected. So we can use our standard approach to browser testing, so that's good news. We've looked at hosting. And we're recommending something called platform as a service-based hosting, certainly for vesting day. We know that IT systems will grow in the future, but for now we're recommending something a little bit more standalone, just to kind of ease the go live and launch processes there. And we're taking an approach technically that minimizes complexity. So we're ruling out unnecessary features, certainly at the early stages, things such as my account functions and stuff like that are not under consideration, certainly in the first few sprints that we're working on. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Lee now for a little preview of what you can expect to see in Drupal in the future.
Right, let me just load it up. Right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Right, so this will be a brief demo of the Drupal content creation process from within the backend environment. When you first log in, you'll be presented with a content screen. From over here, you can obviously see what content's there, the status of it, whether it's published, draft, archived, when it was last updated. Obviously, you have filtering based on what content types there are, statuses. So to add a new page, for example, you go to add content. You presented with your list of pages that you can create within Drupal. So for example, we're going to create an article one. So if I create test content. add a test image. So right, when we get to the actual the functionality of the page content, what we would like in the page, we've actually used our own slice embedding function. It's something that we've customized for this Drupal for this site specifically to improve the editor's experience when they're creating new content, by also using the embedding ability for slices. And security is greatly improved. We're limited, the users are limited to basic HTML. All the content can be managed via the slices rather than accessing the pure HTML. For example, you don't really want them adding full iframes, for example, to pages, so it greatly improves the security of the system. So if you want to add slices, if I add in a test title, add in a test content, add enough content here. So say if we want to add in a button, then we open up the slices experience. So here you'll be presented with a list of slices which you can integrate into the content. So for example, for a button, we'd add a call to action. You select the call to action. It will ask you what URL you'd like to put in. So I'll put in Google for now. Give a name for the button. Do create and place. That will then place it within the content. That's how you'd see it on the front end. So then if I publish this, so this now creates the page on the front end. So if we go and visit the front end of the website, so you now have got our title, test content, the button, and the other part of the paragraph. So if we wanted to add in some more, so if we add another content, and then let's say we want to add in a block quote, again, you go to our slices management, select a block quote, or pull quote as it's known here, put in the quote, click create and place. That will place it directly within the editor. Again, publish, save and edit. So that will eventually save it to the database. That's saved. So then when you go to the front end, you now have your new content button within it. So they're now the new quotes within the content of the front end. We've also made some more changes to this experience, just showing how highly configurable Drupal is. We've added the ability to specify metadata. As you might have noticed from down here, you've got the workflows. Obviously, if you've got any sort of governance regarding how content is managed, published, scheduled through the site, it can all be controlled here. We've also got scheduling of content, so you can choose when an article or page is published out, and then when again it's unpublished from the public. If I go back to the actual main content page, you have obviously the ability, depending on what your roles and permissions are, whether you can review content that needs to be reviewed. So any, say, draft content before it goes to publication needs to be reviewed by another person, then that will appear under here. And then you can also see if you have any scheduled pages that will either be published or unpublished at any certain time from that tab there. That pretty much covers obviously the basics of Drupal. Like I mentioned before, it's highly configurable. We can pretty much customize it to any kind of workflow or pattern that's required. So I'm going to hand you over to Ale now.
Can you see my screen, team?
Yes.
Brilliant. So we have done a lot of work. So if you go back to the cast your mind back to the very first slide, there were a lot of people partying with streamers and hula hoops. If you can imagine that, there's a lot going on in the last 10 days, and we don't have the luxury, I guess, of time being on our side. So we're trying to hit the ground running, and with the true kind of like agile pace, we are sprinting to do a bit of discovery tasks, a bit of define tasks, and a touch of design in sprint 1. So you might be wondering where to from here. So I'm going to hand over to Stu to give a bit of an overview of the rough agile plan.
Yes, thanks, Conley. Yeah, big round of applause for Lee though, because there's nothing worse than doing a live demo on a remote call. So fair play. That's very well done. Yeah, I mean, so this is actually only this plan we've revised literally over the last 24 hours, so not many people have seen this. I'm not going to read through every single sprint. Obviously, the big Gantt chart that Juliet was talking to at the start of this, obviously this project has started a bit later than would have been ideal, so we have literally hit the ground running, and as Richard alluded to, I think it's been a bit of a struggle at times to get that balance of making progress while also making sure that everybody kind of understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and bringing them on that journey with us. So that's something we're trying to rectify. So yeah, ultimately, as a few people have alluded to, we're taking an agile approach to this project, which means kind of constantly replanning every 2 weeks and reprioritizing. The reason that's really valuable on a project like this is we're really conscious that this is a project that forms part of a very complicated program of work in terms of getting to 2 new unitary authorities, both for vesting day and the amount of change as a bunch of organisations that you need to go through over the next couple of years. So that kind of sense making and reprioritising every 2 weeks is really valuable in allowing us to respond to the wider program of change that's going on. So what we've outlined here is we replan every 2 weeks. So between now and vesting day, there's about 11 sprints of work, and we're starting sprint 2 today. We'll share these slides anyway, so you can have a read through. What's on this slide is effectively like what we expect our main focus to be at each point between now and March. What I would say in all agile projects is we're far more confident of the things sooner rather than later, and like I say, we will change and adapt to whatever else is going on in the program, some of which is unknown, and one of the challenges we've got at the moment is trying to even have a single focus goal for each sprint is quite difficult, because there's obviously the technology build, there's the design, there's the user research, there's a whole ongoing piece of understanding the wider change that the organisation is going through and how those interdependencies play out. So we've tried to distill it down into a sentence or two that describes what our main focus is going to be at each point. We'll regularly update this and make sure that we kind of show it regularly during these show and tell sessions so people can get a sense of how that's changing and how it's adapting. And I think next up, Connolly's just going to give us a rundown of what our immediate focus is for the next 2 weeks.
Yes, so Sprint 2, what we're calling Sprint 2, officially starts today, Thursday the 12th of November. So have a look out in your diaries for future show and tell. So I think we're going to have one around Wednesday the 25th or Thursday the 26th of November. So it should be in your diary. And then we're going to have a few workshops this week. So we've got a user needs one. We'll have a Drupal deep dive, a week note session, and a session on accessibility, and a conversation about content management. So for those of you that want to get involved in those, please reach out to Juliet or Richard so we can then make sure that the sessions align with your diaries, or potentially if you can't make the session, I guess either share the Miro board or working slides with you to keep you up to date. So that's on the right, a bit of a screenshot of the Trello card that we're using to kind of manage the project tasks. So that's our goals. We've got a lot of goals. So that's our goals for the next 10 days. And I'll hand over to Ale, who's just going to open up the discussion about the user research and the leads that have been provided thus far.
Yeah, so like as I mentioned, we already have some leads for the user research with mainly residents in this case. So these are the people that have been taken forward, they're expressing interest, or like in the case of Danny or Vicky and Jerry, they shared like a list of community groups we could tap into. We're going to have a meeting with Sue next week to talk about how like we could leverage possibly like any existing channel to find people, and we've got the champion forums, but possibly these are going to be too early. So I took a note about all the good ideas you had in the chat about including professionals, GPs, doctors, police, possibly even businesses, and possibly members. But if you have got any other ideas about like how to interact with anybody else, different profiles, one of the things we're gonna do next week is to design like, exactly the profile of people we would like to talk to. But I think it's going to be crucial to speak with the right people for the right kind of pages, content, services that we want to test. But if you've got like in the case of Vicky and Jerry, they share like the list of community groups that we could tap into. So it's going to be easier for us to interact and plan. If you've got anything like that, or yeah, please get in contact so that we can work on it together.
And that was, in a nutshell, the show and tell for Sprint 1.